Layers. It is spring, so everyone is spring cleaning and they're Marie Kondoing their entire lives. So it's generally around this time every year that I see people trying to set new goals for themselves. So we're going to talk about hashtag goals today. So three things before you start setting your goals that I've kind of noticed that I wanted to talk about is number one, think what is required of me. So that could be bills or classes that you're supposed to be taking, or think of your job. What is required of you at your job? Do you have to show up from 8 to 5, or can you work freelance at any time? Those types of things. So you don't want your things that are required of you to go lax in your journey to try to achieve certain goals. Number two, also think about what is your season. So a lot of frustration that people experience in setting their goals comes from either they're trying to set goals that are in someone else's season or in one of their own previous seasons. Like, for example, I am a mom, I'm a wife, so I've got a 12-year-old, I've got a husband, I've got a dog who's perfect in literally every way. And it would be unrealistic for me to set goals to travel the world by myself. At this point in time, I have requirements at my job to be there physically. And then I also have requirements to my family. I probably could have done that in my college years, or that is also somebody else's season. So if somebody else does not have these responsibilities, these things that are required of them, they're probably more apt to reach their goal of being able to travel the world more. So think about your own season and forgive yourself for not being in the season that you want to be. Real talk, honestly, this is where a lot of people's frustration comes from. They get mad at themselves for not being where they think they should be. So they get mad at themselves thinking, well, I used to be able to run 10K in this certain amount of time when I was in college. Well, now you're 40 and you need to think about what's realistic for you at this point. It's not bad for you to set a different goal. It's sober, it's healthy to acknowledge the new season that you're in and to set goals that are attainable for you. That'll help you in your happiness level, and also to help you even want to set goals in the future. So number three, think about priority. So the goals that you're setting, does it require a priority that you don't have? For instance, if you know that prioritizing healthy eating is not a thing for you, think about the priorities that you do have and try to integrate them. So you might not necessarily prioritize meal planning or healthy shopping or whatever, but you do prioritize moral character. So being an honest person, you do prioritize a social life. So maybe making that non-priority a priority for you is just including other people in on what you're doing. So to be able to make meal prep a priority for you, you might need to loop in other people to help you do it. So maybe have a meal prep party with your friends, since being social is one of your priorities. So those are just three things to be thinking about before you set your hashtag goals for the spring. I also wanted to talk to you about not getting discouraged in your goal setting because of a confusion between objective, goal, and tactic. So really, you can have multiple goals within an objective. So your objective could be healthier. Now that is super generic, super general. It's that in itself is non-measurable. But you could have a goal of drinking 64 ounces of water in a day. And then you could have another goal of not eating any sweets in a day, or only one cheat meal per week, or whatever. Your tactic is your method or your how-to. So like, for instance, if your objective is to be healthier and your goal is to drink 64 ounces of water in a day, then your tactic could be a quota that you want to meet. So a morning quota. So by 10 a.m., I want to have this many ounces in my body already. Or by 2 p.m., I want to make sure I drink this many ounces. These tactics are things you can check off. And I don't know about you, but when I can check something off, I feel accomplished. So if I just set a goal for myself of be healthier, how do I know if I'm reaching that goal? I'm setting myself up to be mad at myself, to be discouraged, to feel like I'm not reaching it if I don't organize my thoughts by objective, goals, and tactics. So you could have an objective of moving out of your parents' house. So your goals for that could be to raise a certain amount of money by a certain amount of time, or have that money saved. Another goal could be to have your roommates picked out on who you're going to live with. And then you can have multiple tactics underneath those goals. So raising a certain amount of money or having a certain amount of money in the bank by a certain date. Your tactics for that could be, okay, I'm going to pull 3 night shifts per week to make sure that I have that. Or I'm going to make sure that I don't spend more than this amount of money per week on frivolous things or whatever. That way you'll have things that you can check off to meet your goals that'll help you obtain the objective. So I love talking about objectives, goals, tactics, and I love brainstorming that per individual. So I'd love to hear some things that you're trying to accomplish, and I'd love to brainstorm with you either one-on-one or maybe we can make it a group conversation here on social media. So I like to hear, what are some objectives that you have, or some hashtag goals that you're hoping to reach sometime this year. You know, spring has sprung. It's getting warmer. Flowers are blooming. It's time for us to bloom too. So your objectives, your goals could be to be healthier. It could be to move out of your parents' house. It could be whatever you want it to be. It could be decide where you're going to go to college. It could be plan for a kid, having a kid someday, or whatever. So I'd love to talk through some of those things, especially as it comes to individuals or just people around us. So while you're thinking and brainstorming on these things, the last thing I'm going to leave you with is just make a plan to endure, because setting goals and objectives and tactics and all that stuff, it could be strenuous. So it's not going to be super fun, happy time. It's going to require sacrifice, and you need to plan to succeed. And the only way you can do that is if you have built-in checkpoints of hope. So there was a John Hopkins professor named Kurt Richter in the 1950s. He did a pretty weird, kind of morbid study with some rats to test mental endurance, honestly. And so he put some rats in these jars of water to see how long they could swim before they drowned. So again, like I told you, morbid. But the general lifespan of those rats once dropped into the jars was about 15 minutes. Now he did a different experiment with a different set of rats where he dropped them into the water for maybe about a minute, and then he would lift them up out of the water and give them some type of reprieve, some type of rest. And then he would put them back in the water to see how long their lifespan would be. So the average lifespan of those rats that experienced some type of hope, some type of reprieve, was 3 days. So that's 3 days versus 15 minutes. The same is true in our life. If you are putting yourself in a strenuous situation where you're striving, and you're not setting up checkpoints of hope and reprieve, then you're not gonna last that long. So if one of your goals is to go back to school, remind yourself that it's not gonna be forever. If you're trying to get a certain degree, remind yourself that it's not going to be forever. It's just for a certain period of time. Put built-in reprieves for yourself. So after a certain semester, decide, okay, I'm going to go on this vacation and just enjoy myself. That's my reprieve. Your endurance is going to be a lot more, especially in things of reminding yourself stories of people who have succeeded in whatever your objective or your goal or your tactic is. So I'd love to hear from you. What are some of your objectives or goals or tactics that you're working towards? And I'd love to start a conversation. So feel free to leave it in the comments or just send it to me personally, and I'd love to talk through that with you. Thanks. Have a great day.